morning, Austin.
Hey, Dad, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited about our guest today. We got two of my favorites from the past. Today, our journey is going to take us to French Camp, Mississippi, and inside the heart and mind of one of my favorite father-son teams. This is a story about football, the outdoors, creativity, inside the relationship of faith and family. My name is Ken Karcher, and I'll be your host. Alongside me today is my son, Austin, and he'll be the co-host. Today, we'd like to welcome Team Hosket as our guest to Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. Welcome, Jesse, Bruce. Glad to have you.
Good to be here. Yeah, good to see you guys. We appreciate you having us on as guests, and we're looking forward to spending some time with you.
Well, thank you, guys. Well, Bruce, let's start with you, and let's go back to when you were a kid growing up in the Hosket home, and tell us a little bit about your parents, siblings, and your childhood.
Yep.
Yeah. I grew up in Ohio back in the day. I know you're a Yankee too, so you were around the store. It's probably why we had something in common. And I grew up in a broken home, and early on realized that I wanted something different than what my parents had. And I had two siblings, two sisters. And, my parents loved me, but they really didn't know how to do life well. And so I think that whole process, the Lord led me to always wanting a very solid, strong marriage and family. And eventually, he led me to French Camp Academy in Mississippi, a Christian boarding school, where I graduated and went off to college, to Bible college, and then ended up coming back there. And met my wife, and we married, and we worked there ever since, our whole lives.
Bruce, when you look back at your childhood, do you have any favorite memories?
It's funny because I'm doing a lot of story studying, and I find that most of my memories, because of early childhood trauma, have been blocked from my mind. I remember I spent a lot of time with my dad. He loved to hunt and fish. So I had some good memories, traveling, going to Canada, going bear hunting, deer hunting in the fall. Those were my best memories.
Bruce, describe your relationship with your dad, and then do you have a memorable conversation with him that sticks out?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my dad was a World War II vet. He was in Okinawa when the atomic bomb was dropped, which means basically he would have been part of the group that would have invaded Japan. So I tell folks that bomb made it possible for me to be here. But because of that, he had he was just a different guy. I mean, you guys know guys like that. And so he loved me, but his capacity to be able to say those things and share that was very hard for him. But I'll say this: at the end of his life, he was in his mid-60s. He was dying of prostate cancer, and he had a place up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And he and I sat there on his bed, and we had the first real, honest, open conversation about life, And so I'll never forget that. I'm grateful the Lord gave it to me. He wept over, things that he didn't do and should have done. And so that was a very important time.
Bruce, what role did faith play in your home growing up?
Yeah. My parents took me to church, and we were in and out, but I never really saw it lived out. But my testimony is this: because of who I married, her family was praying for me, even though they didn't know me. Her grandfather was a godly man. Her parents were godly people. And so throughout my growing up, I sensed, even in my darkest days, I sensed God's presence. And now I know that it was them praying for my protection because I was going to marry their daughter and granddaughter.
That's awesome. Jesse, tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up in your home. Tell us about your parents and about your siblings.
Yeah, so, I mean, as a family, we were super blessed as kids. You know, we had great parents that were, you know, they were great role models and they loved each other. Grew up in a unique situation because I have three, you know, full blood siblings. Yet my parents, who were working at the boarding school and part of ministry, we always had, as younger kids, we had other people in the house. They were dorm parents, so there might be 10, 15 other guys. And I was young, so I remember a little bit of that. But they were, you know, raising those boys and mentoring them at the same time as raising us. So that was unique. So I remember being in the dorm very little with those guys. I remember, you know, my dad being a football coach growing up. So I remember being out on the practice field all the time, you know. So I remember those memories, and you know, we were always doing something. I feel like we were always pushed to do something productive with our time. I think that's one of the big takeaways I got from my dad. Not a whole lot of time just hanging out or watching TV or just relaxing. We were always motivated to be getting something accomplished. But again, I think the biggest thing that sticks out to me as I get older was just probably my parents, I would say, goals, or really just living out their faith in the fact that you can tell they didn't place a whole lot of treasure in worldly things. I mean, they spent a lot of their time ministering to other people and really living in a way that showed, hey, um, they really believe what they were saying. So that stands out.
Jesse, what were some challenges, as you mentioned, living in that environment where you have multiple people in the home that are not what you just said, full blood brothers or sisters? What were some challenges or benefits for that?
Well, again, I'd say I was very young. How old would I have been? 4 or 5 when y'all stopped. I was very young when we lived around, actually in the dorm. But I have a few memories of being with those older high school boys, but not a whole lot. Like I remember, you know, maybe throwing a football around for them, or you know, playing ball, or just like they were almost like an uncle to me because that just the age gap. But don't recall a whole lot of those memories. I remember more of, you know, probably a good thing. Parents wanted to shelter us as we got older. We kind of moved out of the dorm life, even though they still lived on campus and were still staff, but probably around the age of 4. So, like I said, just not a whole lot of memory with those guys. But now, looking back at it, those guys are still very. There's a handful of them that are still very involved with our family, and you know they'd call me a brother, and I'd call them a brother. And you know, mom and dad were able to be parents to those guys, and they mean a lot to them. So I think that's what stands out to me now.
If someone were to ask you what French camp is like, how would you describe it in your own words, Jesse? And, you know, from that, do you have one specific memory that just sticks out?
French camp is like it's very unique. It is very sheltered, but there's a lot of good people that really, again, that they truly live what they believe, and it's evolving over time, and some of it, you know, some of it can be a little disappointing or frustrating as it evolves. But looking back at our time there as a family, I think one of the things that really stands out to me as coaches, I remember bringing Lucas Orchard. He came came to hang out with us for a weekend, and he went to church with us. And of course, you can imagine how many dorm students come in for church.
150.
150. And we go to church, so it's a very unique experience for Luke. And then we go after church. We all exit the church. We go across the parking lot and we eat in the cafeteria. And I remember Luke's his mind just being like, he was boggled. Like, he's like, man, there's like a cold or something over there. And I'm like, it's hard for somebody from the outside, to come in and understand like it's how sheltered it is and like how structured it was to protect and grow the kids that were involved in the ministry there. So,
Did you recognize it being sheltered back when you were attending the school and stuff, or was it something when you went out into, go play college ball and stuff that you began to realize that it was a little bit different?
yeah, for sure. I had to be out, I had to be exposed, to the world before I realized, there was definitely something different going on there in a good way.
Jesse, when you think
about, it's one of the things I'm looking forward to talking about, like how that affected me as well as transitioning, just from the coaching personnel that I was involved with, like the respect I had for those people in high school, like to moving into like, the secular world and having people in authority that, may or may not have the same type of standards or belief.
we're going to get to that for sure. That's so Jesse, when you think of your dad sitting there next to you, can you remember or think about one of the most memorable conversations between father son that you two had, or even quarterback coach that you've had?
Yes, I can. And I think it's pretty recent. I think it was about half a year ago. We were home for a period of time around Christmas, and we were hanging out outside around the campfire. And of course, we were talking about. I think we started off talking about some of the new NIL deal stuff and some of the new NCAA regulations. It's like, Dad, could you imagine if we'd have played more than 4 years of college football? I never redshirted. I played 3 years. What if the ball would have bounced this way? What if it would have bounced that way? And we got off talking about Gardner Minshew, who we played
Yeah.
in the playoff game. And it was an average game for me, and I remember talking about, fumble snap, and I'm like, the ball would have bounced this way, bounced that way, I probably would have been playing in the NFL. And Gardner Minshew, who knows? Was
Yeah.
one game play. But there's a lot of scenarios like that in life. And he looked at me, and I wasn't disappointed by any means, but he looked at me and was like, hey, I'm more proud of you for what you've done with your family than to, be making a couple $1 million. So
That's special.
Bruce, how about you, Bruce? Do you remember? Is there a conversation from your perspective between you and Jesse that meant a lot to you?
That's a good question. I feel like we've always been able to talk. I would say a time right after we lost our first state championship, and I didn't realize it, but Jesse had somebody who was calling him because he threw an interception. My bad call.
Not a bad call. I was supposed to throw
a slant.
No, we were trying to kill the clock. I kept throwing the out route to the outside boundary, and of course, everybody wants to win the football game. And I decided I'm gonna throw the post over the middle.
Yeah. Anyway, he threw an interception right at the end, and we would have won that first state championship game. We ended up losing. Well, he had somebody who would call him and put that on him and blame him. Told him he was never going to mount anything. Still don't know who it is to this day, I don't think. But, I remember and he didn't tell me. As you know, he's a pretty private guy. He can keep a pretty good secret. So he didn't tell me. And so to me, when I found that out that he had, we went a whole off season and we were prepping for a new season. I didn't find out until later on, you know, and when I found that out, I thought much more highly of him in his capacity to carry adult stuff, big boy
Mm.
stuff on his own. So that was a big moment for me.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So, Bruce, you mentioned you went to French camp as a student from Ohio, but take our listeners now through some of the roles that you have had at French camp since you've gone back, and how would you describe French camp's vision and mission?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting place. I think, again, I've come to learn this as I get older. It's about the body of Christ. It's not
Mm,
about a place.
mm.
It's not about an organization. It's the body of Christ in that place.
Amen.
And so sometimes we can put our hope and trust in a place and be disappointed. And I think over the years, a lot of kids have spoken highly of French camp, and they should, but it's really God's people in that
Mm.
place. God's people are everywhere in the world. And so what we try to do is point them to the body of Christ, to the church. It's not about French camp. But French
Mm,
camp was definitely filled with a lot of very committed, unusually committed believers they modeled it for me. And it was actually my father-in-law, my wife's dad, who was the dean of students when I was a student. And he mentored me over the years and eventually gave me his daughter and his job. Uh, both of them were pretty good deals.
When you look at raising your family at French camp, what were some of the benefits or even challenges? And again, as Jesse mentioned, you were house parents as well. So what made that special, or what had some challenges to that, Bruce?
Yeah, we felt like God was calling. I did a lot of different things. I was a Bible teacher. We were house parents. I was a football coach. I coached basketball, boys and girls for a while. I became the dean of students during that time. I was going to grad school at Mississippi State, during that time. So I had a lot of different things going on. Uh, People now don't do that kind of stuff. That's not the world we live in. And people ask, how did you do all that? Or why did you do all that? And I said, I didn't know any different. I watched my father-in-law lead the way, and he never got up a day that he didn't have something that he was going to tackle and accomplish. And he never complained. He never whined, no matter what he was doing.
mm,
And so I saw that, and I didn't know that you had a choice.
mm.
That you could say, hey, I don't want to live that way. And so that was an incredible blessing to me. And a lot of people at the school at that time lived that way.
Thanks, Bruce.
This is for both you, Bruce, and Jesse. So one of you can answer first. It doesn't matter. But who influenced your guys' passion for sports?
Obviously, I think my dad did. Again, since I was a kid, he was a head football coach, and when I was younger, just always being involved with it. We were always
Yeah.
out there for practice. We were with him the whole time. So I think also I always remember these old dusty highlight films, VHS from when they had a good team here or there, and just sticking those in, like, and watching guys. These are some of these guys are older dorm guys that would have been some of them in my dad's dorm, so I know them. And then just putting in their highlight reels and watching them, be like, man, I want to go make a big play. I want to make a highlight reel. So that
Yeah.
really influenced me as well. So
What about you, Bruce?
What was the question again?
some people that influenced our athletic lives or careers.
Yeah. That's I played football in high school there at French camp, had some interesting coaches, and I went off my freshman year, played at a little school, Taylor University in Indiana,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
didn't last very long. But I always viewed football as an opportunity to really teach young men how to do hard things.
Hmm.
And so the Lord just gave me a desire to want to do that. In and of itself, the game of football, I hate to say, really doesn't have much value. But if you can teach them all of those things that they need to learn for life about working with people and all the dynamics and hard work and being a good steward of what God has given you, I think it transfers. And in my case, for my sons, both Jesse and Ben, it has transferred into their adult life to their families, their work ethic, what they accomplish. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
Now,
And I'd like to keep going as well because I'm
yeah.
kind of compartmentalizing in my mind, and obviously, Coach Carter, a big influence on my athletic career. I think I think the reason that was like why we made such a good connection is like with Carter, like it was finally back to like someone that you could like respect, like their family life, their integrity and how they lived, and it helped me to like obviously it helped me grow, like just to be able to be coached by someone that you had respect for, which was a big deal. Not and that's beside like all the mental game and how I was developed as a quarterback. But I think that was the biggest foundation to our success was the fact that hey, I respect this guy as a man. Like I want to be taught by him. I want to learn.
Mm.
So
Well, that's very kind of you, Jesse, to say about that. What So obviously, I played for my dad a couple times in my career, and there were good things about it, and there were tough moments as well. What is it like from your guys' perspective? Being a coach of your son or being a son of a coach of your coach.
Yeah, he got no break. He got no vacation. I mean, they'll tell you, both of my boys will tell you, there wasn't a vacation from the time they were in the sixth grade
Mm,
that we didn't work out, that we didn't practice some fundamentals. They never got a break from it.
mm,
Uh,
I think that would go for. We had cousins that played with us as well. I have one cousin that was in the same class who ended up, you know, our senior year of high school, probably our senior year. He's one of our best receivers. He was a late bloomer, but the same thing. Like we were rolling nonstop. So I remember coming back to a beach house down on the Gulf Coast in Mississippi, and my cousin Hunter. We just get back from a workout. We were working out at the facilities at a local high school, and he's hollering, "Let me out! Let me out!" He opens the door and he's puking on the side of the road. Yeah, because we we're running 110s, and then he's the only receiver there, and we're chunking them routes for 30, 40 minutes. It's 110 degrees, and we're headed home, and he's puking on the way home. So again, it was a lifestyle. I mean, we enjoyed it, but we didn't know any better. It was funny.
that's awesome.
Again, this is for both of you. What were some of the highs and lows, Bruce, of your coaching career, and Jesse, your playing career, and what role did faith play in those?
I'll tell you, Jesse's 10th grade year, we had a very good team, and we had a lot of good athletes. And I had 4 or 5 good athletes that got in trouble at the school, and I had to send them home. And
Mm.
I think that's the first. Jesse actually started as the high school quarterback in the 8th grade. I lost my quarterback And so I moved him up, and he had just finished his 7th grade year. He played spring football with the high school team, but he had a better arm than anybody I had. I knew I wasn't going to run him anyway. And so he started his 8th grade year. I had a center who used to be the quarterback, and he was a wonderful leader. He's actually the principal of French camp now. But I would let him call the plays, manage the huddle, and Jesse was just one of the players in the huddle. And Grady was a great guy, great leader, but Jesse played quarterback from that time on, and he was all I had. But his 10th grade year, we had a lot of potential, and I had to send 5 guys home, and we went from hero to zero. I mean, it was bad because you're talking about 28 guys, and you lose 5 athletes.
Right.
I think that was a hard time for all of them because he realized I think his success depended on other people, and that's a hard thing when you're putting in a lot of work and you see these guys that aren't doing the work or do something stupid and it costs you. But I think that was good for all of us.
But we had
How about you, Jesse?
I would say a few of the same things. I mean, just going back to that 10th grade team, these are guys that we had years in. I mean, relationships with them and just developing, it's always, as a small town and small football teams, like, we need these guys placed here and here, and you're counting on them, and next morning you wake up and it's football season. Hey, they're gone. It was funny because I think we played 3 games with them, and the first game of the year we played UPOR, which is a bigger school. They were a 2A school. They ended up going to the state championship that year and getting beat. And we spanked them. I mean, we whooped them for the opening game of the season, and we were like, well, we were pretty solid. So yeah, that was a big. Honestly, it probably helped me grow more than anything because you have to kind of step up and fill in where other guys are leaving out. Then I definitely go
when you get
to the state championship game where you throw an interception and you lose. First time being in a state championship, and small town, everybody was watching, and they loved that team and they supported us, and then you feel like you let people down, but it's kind of funny as I think about life, like what I try to relate hard things to, and like things I grew from. It's like I've been blessed. Like I have not had a very hard life. Like the hardest things I've experienced have come from football, which is nothing compared to some of the other people that that I have relationships with or I've seen grow from challenges. So
Bruce, obviously
another part of that. So obviously in our scenario, the kids had to play both ways. I tried to keep Jesse in the defensive backfield as much as we could. So he played some safety, and he was great. He was a great safety. We got to the senior year. We had a couple injuries. We had some gaps. His brother had left the year before and had actually been a starting middle linebacker for 4 years at the middle linebacker spot. And the head coach, who was also the defensive coordinator, Nathan Wright, came and said, "What would you think about Jesse playing middle linebacker?" I said, "We'll do whatever it takes to win. If you think you need that." Well, Jesse ended up being the leading tackler on the team this is the year we won the state championship. And we would actually pull him out. If we got ahead of people, we would actually pull him out. So he didn't have all the playing time. But he was a starting quarterback and middle linebacker for the state championship team, which was very unusual.
Yes, absolutely. So, Bruce, I want to go back to the decision you had to make to send those 5 kids home. As a coach, obviously, I've coached, my dad's coach. That's not an easy decision because, like you said, your success a lot of times is tied to the athletes or the players that you have. But then also, it goes back to your standards and belief. Talk us through, kind of went through your decision making process and why you decided to make that decision.
Well, I mean, I didn't have to wrestle with that too much. We had pretty firm policies on certain things at the school, and so I've always had to be the kind of the bad guy all those years for a lot of different people, and I didn't think twice. I did have a lot of people after that were very surprised that I did that,
Mm,
and for in a lot of ways, I think it strengthened our resolve and
mm,
our integrity with people. That football is important, but we have these standards that we live by, and the kids got to know it. People in the community got to know it. You know, to have that consistency. So
that's a heck of a statement. Um, so Jesse, you end up going. You're obviously getting recruited, and you go first to Etowamba. Can you talk to us a little bit about your recruiting story and how you ended up there?
Yeah, so I believe it was you might know Coach Carter, but I believe it was John Williams or Coach Williams. Was it?
Yes, yes.
Yes. And man, I feel like he was a solid guy, and he was showing up to practice when we were in the playoffs, deep in the playoffs. Their their season was over, and we were going for the state championship. And there was weeks where he was there every other day, Coach Williams. He was there every other day at practice, and he seemed like a solid guy. And ended up going, ended up going, getting signed up there. And as soon as I signed, Coach Williams leaves,
Mm,
and he was. I feel like he was my advocate, and they hired a new head coach who was the defensive coordinator, and he was very had a different offensive mindset, and he was very pushing that heavily on the OC there. And we want to run in quarterback, we want to run some option. So like, and they did a lot of air raid as well. And then the first team guy that was there was an Allister, and he was very talented. He was more talented than myself. Very very athletic. But yeah, that's kind of what led me to go there from the beginning was Coach Williams, and then he ended up hopping ship as soon as I showed up. So I was kind of in a bind, but it's kind of the background of that story.
that was probably the hardest year of my life. Traveling to Itawamba, knowing the scenario that Jesse went on, and then seeing it change. I made sure that when these guys came into my home, that they all told me that he could leave whenever he wanted,
mm,
and all of them did say that. And I had to, as you know, I had to do some work to get him out because back then you couldn't swap,
right.
and it was a process. And I had to keep holding those guys to their word.
Yeah.
Even the guys that were gone, I had to. But that was a very hard year for me, and that was the year that I realized that my identity was way too much in my son playing football.
Mm,
It was a struggle. It was a struggle for me. So
Yeah, but looking back, I mean, you wish you knew then what you knew now. But I remember our first game. We went down to the Gulf Coast, and the starting quarterback, he gets rocked like the first drive, dislocates his shoulder. Second string goes in. He's getting pounded, and they throw me in for a quarter, and they won a year of eligibility.
yeah.
mm.
One quarter of football. So
Wow.
it's like that's crazy to think about.
It's amazing how the rules have changed. Now you can go play junior college ball and not even count towards your career. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So you obviously go to Enawamba for a year, and then you end up going to East Central. What caused you to go to East Central?
I think it was obviously the current situation. It was just from some of the relationship with the offensive coordinator who was the quarterback coach, and then obviously my dad. Everybody knew it was a tough situation, and of course I was bummed out about it. I wanted an opportunity to play, and I didn't feel like I was being given a fair chance. But that's I feel like that's everybody that plays backup. Hey, the
Yeah.
coach doesn't like me, or they got some type of you know. That's everybody that's not playing. But
Yeah.
no, I forget. I think maybe we were toward the end of the season. The season might not even been over yet. I can't really remember when I called you, Coach. But I remember, Coach Karcher had come in a handful of times as well. Recruiting me my senior year. So I'm gonna give Coach Karcher a call and gave him a call. He picked up the phone. He seemed excited to talk to me. And he said, "Well, Jesse, I'm not really allowed to talk to you right now, so kind of ended the conversation." I honestly don't remember the details of it, but I remember there was a time frame we had to wait before
Mm.
either one of us we could really reach out and connect. But yeah,
I remember we came down to meet with Coach, and I remember him said, Jesse, I don't know if it was your office or if it was another room.
it was a different classroom.
Yeah, different classroom. Had Jesse in front of him and talking, and I remember this specifically. He said because he had been in my office and he tried to recruit Jesse,
Yeah.
and I liked Coach. And, he was a straight shooter and all that. And I remember him telling Jesse, he said, you're dinged." And I thought, that's a funny thing to say, dinged. You know, you've got a year of you know behind you, and it hadn't been good. You know,
Yeah.
and but he gave him the opportunity, and that's all we could ask for.
Hmm.
And so, after that, Jesse never had to look back in his football career. He always had good opportunities.
Like,
Jesse, let's tie in now what you wanted to talk about a little bit ago when you said just transitioning from that French camp environment, the coaches you're around, and you said, you wanted to start talking about then when you left to go to college. Tell us what was going through your heart there, and then even tie in what made East Central special. I think of some of the memories that you've told me about with the guys and things like that, but let's talk about that now.
I kind of lost you at the end, but I can start on that beginning point. Transitioning from high school to college. Again, we were in a unique place at French camp. I think of our head coach, Nathan Wright, and I think of my dad. I think of all the guys on staff, Coach Rhodes. Man, just really really solid guys who lived their lives in a way that hey they were the real deal. Like they didn't just talk the talk; they lived their faith through their life, and they were servant leaders, and they really loved other people, and they were all humble guys. Um, I can still remember. I mean, our head coach, Coach Wright. I mean, every practice he was discipling us as football players. He was giving a sermon,
Hmm.
before every practice, and he was on top of it. The guy knows his Bible, and man, he lives his faith. So again, you go from that atmosphere where people hold this type of standard and they really believe in or they're really living what they believe to hop into the secular world, and then you see the way you know things are not done in like with integrity or in an open situation. It's kind of done behind closed doors is what I felt like. It's like nobody comes out and like shoots it straight with you. Like this is why we're doing this. And then
Yeah.
on top of that, you see you see coaches, talking to you or talking to other guys in a way, or talking about other people in such a way, you're like, I have a hard time. Like, you're putting a blocker between me and yourself. By the way, just the words you're speaking, like, it's hard for me to learn from you. It's hard for me to
Yeah.
respect you. And that, I think that was, one of the big problems I was having at Itawamba. Like, I just didn't have that respect, and it's probably some of my own arrogance as well. It's not all the coach's fault. Just I just struggled. I struggled getting a foothold there. So,
When you think of your East Central time and experience, I think of the dorms and some of the things you told me with those guys in 2015. What were some of your most memorable moments at East Central, Jesse?
I think the first spring I was roommates with Kabion, our best receiver. You got to understand, I grew up in a house. We didn't have a TV. We didn't have a PlayStation. Didn't have cell phones. Didn't have those things. And I come in. Kabion could FaceTime his girlfriend. He could FaceTime his girlfriend. He could watch a TV show, a cartoon on one TV screen, and he could play his game console on another TV screen at the same time. It would go all night long. And we had a great relationship. I was like, man, I just got to ignore this joker. I can go to bed at 8:30 and 9 o'clock. It was definitely a memory. And then I remember that fall, Kavion's cousin Henry showed up, and they ended up being maybe that summer they ended up being roommates, and I got stuck with I don't think I requested it, but I got stuck with a kicker or a punter. Like, maybe this guy let me sleep a little bit. But at that same fall, I remember Lucas Orchard and one of the other O linemen ended up living in our room, and it's probably, what is it, 12 by 12 dorm room.
Yes.
There's four guys living in this dorm room. Lucas and our other O linemen and the punters in there, and they're sliding mattresses under our bed, and they're pulling them out when it's bedtime. And so that was a pretty good memory. And I think, it just, any of those times, just hanging out with those guys, unique memories. Just, I think of Micah, Barton, some relationships we have with those guys. And we worked hard. There's something that bonds you as men, when you go through a struggle together, when you spend that much time together going through physical pain, even though, it's not the toughest thing in the world, but we for sure went through a struggle like every football team does. It bonds you together as guys. And
Bruce, when you look at Jesse's East Central experience, what do you see from your viewpoint?
Yeah, I just felt like he was in a safe environment. Not obviously, I knew the reality that there's a lot of evil in the world, but I just felt like it was. I tell people, I remember when we had the awards banquet, and I think the president spoke, and maybe the AD spoke, and you spoke, and I said, "This place feels like Bible college, man." These guys are all talking about the Lord, and they're praying and stuff. And not perfect, I know, but I just felt like there was a good, solid leadership there that understood their responsibility to the kids and to the Lord. And I think because of that, God honored that. And we just felt that. We felt a good spirit there. So we were grateful.
definitely,
Now,
it definitely felt more like home. Even just starting with the bones of the college, like, you got all the local good old boys and rednecks. You know what I mean? You got this. Their baseball team was always pretty good, I felt like. So it's just like a whole different makeup of the college itself. When you don't even think about football. It's like, man, I just feel like I fit in here a little bit better, compared to some of the other places. And then again, just the structure of it. I mean, again, I think the one of the things that really stood out to me after the Itawamba experience was it was with the coaching staff there when it comes to just the professionalism of it, like the openness, like, there's clarity, there's transparency. Like this is why we're making this decision. And if you're not number one, or you're number two, or you're number three, we are very clear on why that is and what you need to improve on if you want to be a starter. Like, I think from every individual position coach, like, it was a lot of transparency. Like, we were very open with the players.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I remember when Jesse came home, and I would ask him in preparation for the next week kind of what the game plan was and everything. Sometimes he would tell me that some of the better athletes maybe wouldn't be starting or something. And he told me that Coach Karcher, every week, they get a new opportunity to prove themselves. It's not a guaranteed thing for them. And that really struck me, that he was willing to sometimes set a guy out, who was a better athlete, because he wasn't performing in practice. So,
Well, I hope you're enjoying our podcast today, but I'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsors. Our nonprofit organization, The Win Awakening, is the reason we're able to have this podcast. The Win Awakening is a sports ministry network that began in November of 2022. The Win mission is to encourage and empower leaders to live from a place of victory as they awaken to their wholeness and true identity within environments where they can be known. Our goal is to create safe environments where transparency and vulnerability are accepted, and value and worth are recognized in an atmosphere of love. If you'd like to support the Win Awakening, as well as our podcast, you can donate now at winawakening.org, and please spread the word about our ministry with your friends. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe to Awaken Kingdom Culture on our Spotify and YouTube channels to listen or watch our podcast weekly, every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern. And if you'd like to follow my socials, as well as hear about the upcoming podcast news, watch the latest clips, and get an inside look at my life behind the scenes, you can follow us on Instagram at Awaken Kingdom Culture and Facebook, Awaken Kingdom Culture Podcast. Well, let's get back to the podcast. Now, I know, Bruce, your dad mentioned a little bit ago, Jesse, the word identity. And Bruce, you were very transparent to say that you had too much of your identity in Jesse's success or not success. Jesse, how about you with that word identity, dude? Where did that start to confront your faith that maybe your identity was not in what it needed to be? It was too much into football, if you ever did have that.
Yeah, I would think probably one of the biggest moments that hit me was definitely, after my college football career was over, for sure. Like, you're stepping away from it. You go, and SEMO's not a big, football town or big. Well, they're growing now, but it's not like I was some hero playing quarterback at SEMO by any means. But, even after stepping away from that experience, though, and you're going into the working world, I think you come to realize, hey, like, there's a lot more important things going on. We can find our identity and value, it's something outside of athletics when it comes to our relationship with Christ and how we were created and who we truly are as individuals. So,
Bruce, what did you enjoy most about watching Jesse play?
I have to confess to you, I didn't enjoy most. When I would go to a game, I had to get away from people. I couldn't sit with even the family at times. I had to get up on the top row, and I didn't want to hear people making comments or their thoughts about, football. And I had to just watch it. And I'll be honest with you, when he came up here, they had some guys, they could have been much more productive. They had the most predictable offense on the planet. I could call every play, every time, and which was just completely unlike, what he came from with you. But, that was a frustration. But, you know, I still enjoyed, seeing him be productive and be successful when he had the opportunities.
Yeah, it was definitely a unique experience coming up to SEMO. Very frustrating experience because it's the only place I feel like where I've played athletics and we weren't successful. As a team we weren't successful. Uh, so you put a lot of work and a lot of time, a lot of energy. You work your tail off. You don't see the fruit, or you don't see any of that come to fruition. And again, a big learning experience. I remember Coach Carter always saying, "Hey, when you get recruited, always ask where you're going. Your offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, like, how are you going to develop me? How are you going to help me grow as a quarterback? How are you going to help me grow as an individual?" And I didn't have a whole lot of options. I think West Texas A&M was giving me an offer, and SEMO had given me an offer, and didn't have a whole lot of options. But
The Delta Devils down in
yeah,
Louisiana.
but a great guy. The offensive coordinator here, John Weimers. Um, you know, he had a solid family. He was a good guy. Just, he was an O line coach in the years previous, and you know, high school football coach. Just didn't develop me as a quarterback. I think that's probably one of the biggest disappointments throughout my athletic career. When I say a low, is when I look back at it, like I went downhill. Like my my junior year, I had a pretty solid year, um, and then into my senior year, I went. I was going downhill, but I felt like I didn't understand it because I loved to work at it. I spent so much time, like I worked my tail off at it. It just seemed like the scheme, and for some reason, just it didn't want to fit together. And then I remember having that exit meeting with Coach Tuke. And Coach Tuke, he wasn't new, but he was still new to being a head coach. He had a few years under his belt, and of course, this OC was one of his really good buddies. And I knew, Coach Duke had a really hard time, letting this guy go because he's seeing the same thing we're seeing. Like, what a great guy, but just didn't have, didn't have that. Definitely didn't have that OC quarterback coach mentality. And I remember that exit meeting. I was talking to. I was like, man, you got to find somebody that's play quarterback. I mean, we don't have anybody here that knows how to play quarterback. We got all these defensive minded coaches. We have an O line coach coaching the quarterbacks. And I just came from hanging out with Coach Carter for the last year and a half. And it's like this it seems obvious as a head coach. You need to have somebody that knows how to develop quarterbacks, knows passing schemes and strategies. Like you don't have that guy. And then the next year they go out and hire honestly, I think it's McDowell. He played quarterback at SEMO. Was a very successful quarterback at SEMO, and he comes in, and they just light it up. I mean, they're scoring 50 points a game for the next 4 or 5 years. So it's like, man, it's a lot of. You come in like you work, like it's a very unstructured team. You come in, you work really hard. Like you teach these other guys around you how to work. You teach these other guys around you like this is what it takes to win. As far as younger classes, like this is the attention to detail needs. This is how you approach practice every day. Like this is how it's done. This is the time you got to put in. And yet you don't experience any of the success. Like as soon as you step out, like you see the program explode, which is I'm happy for them. They did a great job. Um, but it was a little bit painful to watch. Like man, I wish I could have been involved with it. So.
Yeah.
Jesse, from your role, what was your dad's greatest strength as a coach?
I think that would be his consistency and his work ethic for sure. I think consistency, no days off, and he set the tone for sure. I mean, we were playing high school football, but it was a lot like a college regimen. I feel like we'd wake up before classes, we'd go lift at 5 o'clock, and we'd get off of classes and he'd have a protein shake every day, and then we'd go hit the fields. And if it was the weekend, we'd go do something then too. So I think for sure
We're going to transition to the outdoors here for a second with Austin, but I want to ask you one last question about your NFL opportunity. Tell us a little bit about that, and then when that came to an end, what was going through your heart and mind, Jesse, and your dad?
Yeah, I think the biggest one of my memories from that experience was we fly into rookie camp and we're all hanging out in Oakland and we're in the team meeting conference room. I don't know, at least 100, 150 guys in there. I feel like all the staff's in there. All the rookies are in there. Some of the existing team is there, and it's just loud. It's a little bit loud. Everybody's talking, goofing. Of course, I'm in the front row, and the other rookie quarterback, Kenny Hill from TCU, he's sitting right beside me. I got my pencil and notebook ready, Coach. You'd be proud of me.
There we go.
I was there 10 minutes early. Anyways, you see John Gruden walks out on stage, and I mean, you talk about a tense atmosphere. I mean, you go from guys like goofing off, and like you could just feel like I'd say admiration and like the respect for the guy in the football world. Like you could just feel it. It was strange. Like I never felt something that tense before, And he's got his clicker, and he's going through the history of Oakland, and he's going, through different statistics, NFL statistics and stuff. And then he stops 5 minutes into the first day, and he's like, "Is Jesse Hosket in the room?" And of course, he's a quarterback guy, and he wants to see what kind of composure you got. And he invites me up on stage, and he says, "Kenny Hill in the room." He invites Kenny up on stage, and we're in front of the whole team. He's like, "All right, I want to hear I want to hear your snap cadence." And this is 5 minutes into the first meeting. So we both go through our snap cadence, and of course you can imagine just even the pressure to speak. But the way it relates to me now is like in the working world, I see like people who think they're under stress or under fire or have tense moments, and I'm just laughing. And like my bosses can see it too because they're like, Jesse is just chill. Like you're not going to frazzle. You're not going to frazzle that joker with anything in the working world. I'm like, guys, you understand? Some of the pressure and the situations I was in, like. You're talking about being in a 5-day camp with John Gruden and the chance to go make a couple $1 million. I'm not getting frazzled over. I'm not getting frazzled over these little projects. So, oh man, it was intense for sure.
Well, how did the cadence go? What did he say? Was it good?
He wanted me to speak up a little bit, but at least I got the cadence, rhythm, and the wording correctly. The only way you would have known the cadence is if you would open the playbook they gave you 30 minutes ago and read like the front page. That was like the snap cadence, like the first thing. So I got the wording correctly. Of course, it was Blue 80, and I think the cadence, the rhythm again. But yeah, it went well. I think another big memory that stood out to me is we're on we get out to the field. Of course, I'm juiced, man. Like even in walkthrough, I'm ripping the thing. I remember sailing one ball over this guy's head, like way in the outer field, and I'm like, golly, I gotta calm down. And they're laughing. It was like I'm just juiced up, but it was like the second day in. We were on the left hash, and I threw they call it a bench route. It's like a 15-yard speed out. Of course, we had an outside vertical was cover 4. He cleared the corner out, and the outside backer, he's out there. He's in the flat. He's doing his job. But I ripped this thing from the left hash to the right sideline over the top of the outside linebacker's head. And Gruden runs over and he slaps me. He slaps me on the butt. And he's like, "Man, there's very few guys I've seen throw football like you." Like he was fired up and he was feeling it. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
So take us, obviously one of the things that, I know is a great passion for y'all is outdoors. Tell us your favorite outdoor activity and sport.
Man, that's a tough question. The favorite one? I love them all so much. I think it's not. I don't think it's not so much the killing or hunting aspect of it either. I think it's just being out there. It's kind of like an escape kind of feels like, hey, this is in my roots. Of course, you go back to, both my grandfathers, my dad's dad and my mother's dad. I mean, hardcore outdoorsmen, both of them. Like, if there was a morning during deer season, they were deer hunting. Like, that's both of them. That's kind of been in the blood. And then, Dad was the same way as we were younger. I don't know, he's kind of dwindled off in his older age, but he doesn't like it as much as he used to. But he got us involved early on. But yeah, I would say my favorite and some of my favorite experiences, honestly, is being with my wife, Carlin. She loves spring turkey hunting, and it's hard to explain if you've never done it. It might sound goofy, but the eastern turkey, especially in Mississippi, like it's for hardcore hunters, they realize these are very elusive animals. They are hard to kill. Like, it's difficult, and it takes time. So if you can consistently kill that animal in Mississippi or Alabama, you're kind of known as like, hey, you know what you're doing. And but anyways, it's a challenge. So I think that's the attractive thing, and I love that my wife loves doing it. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll go home to Mississippi, and the in-laws, my parents will watch the kids, and we'll go turkey hunting for a couple of weeks, and it's a pretty cool experience.
That's awesome. What about how, and this can be Bruce or Jesse, how do you experience God in the outdoors?
You want to go?
Yeah, I mean, that was always an escape for me, from the pressure of coaching or, administrating or whatever else was going on. It was a place of peace. And when the boys were growing up, I always wanted to accomplish something. So this was before the day of cell phones and stuff, but I always had Bible verses that whenever we would go deer hunting, I would give them a Bible verse, and I'd say, "While you're sitting out here, memorize this today." And so I never wasted a moment.
Yeah, I think for me, and part one of the big reasons I'm still in Cape Girardeau is the Mississippi River. I have a little John boat, and I love being out on the river and seeing the sun come up or the sun go down. And it's hard to explain until you've done it, but you can for sure feel like, hey, there's a creator that made this with an intentional design. And I think that's the biggest takeaway you get from being out there. Is, yes, you get the piece of it, like you get the calmness, the still, but it's like, it's hard not to worship a God that created something, this big and this magnificent. And you feel it when you get in tune with all the different types of creation out there, for sure. I think the biggest thing for me is, and you see there's a lot of hardcore hunters out there, and they get goofy with it, like, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but you see them killing stuff and thanking the Lord for it and praying about it. That's not me. That's not me. I think it's always been, it's been in my mind. Hey, we're worshiping the Creator, not the creation. So just try to keep that in the right mindset. So.
Wow. So Jesse, do you remember the day that you met one of your heroes, Mr. Mississippi, Melvin Tingle? Tell me what went through your heart and mind on that day.
Oh, Mel. Well, it's always funny, when you watch somebody on television. I think
that's all we watched, by the way. We watched football yeah, PBS. That was it.
That's all we had. We did watch it. So we watched old Mel. He was either fishing or he was hosting somebody or somebody was hosting him. But that was interesting going down to his place. Very down to earth guy for sure. Nice guy.
You were shocked that I knew him, weren't you?
Yeah. And then it was funny too, because there's Mel that you've watched on TV, and then I believe it was his daughter that would teach with Caton over in Jackson. Was his daughter and daughter-in-law?
I can't remember.
Anyways, Kate would always tell me, like, you don't know how much Mel likes you. Like, he's all the time talking about you to his family. Like, he thinks you're a cool guy. Okay. Yeah.
Well, Jesse and Bruce, I'd be my wife would be mad if I didn't share this story with you, and I know you'll remember it, both of you. But what we felt like, my wife and I felt like a pivotal moment in my coaching career and a big moment in our relationship in 2015. If you remember, was when we came up to French camp and we spent the day with you. We were four-wheeling. You were trying to get me to go on the rope swing, and as you can see, my son's laughing.
Austin
And just,
Yeah, I was there.
oh, that's right.
It was a
That's
good
right.
time.
he was disappointed that he didn't have brakes on his Fuller. I remember.
Yes, yes.
But when we look back at that moment, from our perspective, we felt like that was a real bonding moment between coach and quarterback. And it meant a lot to us. And as I've told you to your face, I've told both you and your dad many times, and this is a big statement, but I still believe this. And Austin, you are the best all-around quarterback that I've ever coached. And regardless of levels, just what made you had the it factor. And I still believe, I'm shocked you weren't in the NFL, but that moment on French Camp's property with you hanging out with Austin and my wife and your family, that is one we've talked about many times and we'll never forget. So publicly, I'm going to say thank you for that. And it was something special.
Yeah. Well, y'all can come relive it anytime you want. That's just normal life. That's the way we grew up.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I want to talk about is,
I was going to ask you while you're on that topic, because I know you love to make me feel good and talk about me being your number one quarterback. Do you have a game or a moment or what performance stands out to you the most when you think back on that season we played?
of yours?
Yeah. Where you thought, like, obviously you saw something in me as you coached me and developed me, but it was a pretty quick climb. Or when you think of all the summer and fall camps, I would say a slow climb back into having that type of confidence. But is there a time when you thought, man, like it's clicking for him now? Like there's something special about it. I'm just curious.
Well, while you're thinking, Dad, for me, like I came and saw you throwing with my dad live, and I remember probably about the second throw, I said, "This guy's." You can just tell when a quarterback has it come out of his hand, and you had that ability to throw the football.
I think that most people, coaches included, I think your dad would agree, we get enamored with the physical skill that is being able to be seen by our eyeballs. But to answer your question, for me, Jesse, it was from the time I met you and then the time we spent together. I don't know if you remember, it was that same day, I think we threw on the French camp field. But what I would call it is you had a consistency of character that I felt like that was the key to great quarterbacks. Everyone, as you climb, is going to have a good arm or they wouldn't be there. Some might run better than another guy. That's that physical skill. But what you had, and I call it the it factor, is that you had a consistency of character which encompasses not just, what people say, oh, he's a good guy. No, you were consistent in preparation. You were consistent in your ability to retain information quickly. You were consistent and able to communicate it clearly to the other players. You were consistent in your work ethic. And so I think that consistency over time in all areas that a quarterback requires to be a successful quarterback. And that's why I thought for sure you'd have a long career in the NFL, whether it was a starter or a backup, just because that is what is needed. And so instead of a moment, I think it's a longevity of consistency that I saw in you that was something special. And then you had a humility about yourself, which is obviously a tribute to your parents and just your upbringing and in your faith. But that's how I would answer that question, your consistency of character. So let's jump to building. And, it takes a lot of creativity, which I don't have any. but I'm sure you remember the night we stained that table together, and I helped direct you do that a little bit in that little old locker room. But talk to us about some of your favorite building projects that maybe you and Dad did together, and tell us a little bit about that.
I feel like growing up, somebody was always building or working on a small project here or there. And, Dad was always going to help. I can remember, putting metal on the Goins' house or going ripping off the porch at the McKnight's house or uh, just just random projects. And then, my mom's dad, he was a great carpenter. Obviously, he had incredible skills. He built a lot of the the campus and infrastructure up at the summer camp at French Camp Academy. Um, so we were just we were around it. That's part of a lifestyle growing up in a small town. As long as there's a lot of contractors around, it's like if you want something, you go build it. And
Mm.
that's where I picked up a lot of it. And I think Dad as well. I think he just helped. I'd say design layout of some of the infrastructure that was built for French Camp Academy. Um, and then when we were seventh graders, we built our parents' home, which me and my brother we were there every day that summer. Um, we'd go we'd go frame on the house and we'd go lift and we'd go work out in the evenings. So we learned a lot of that skill there. There's an older gentleman, which had been my uncle's father, Bobby McKnight, who he's a long time craftsman and kind of like a site foreman. So picked up a lot from him. I think a lot of it goes back to athletic career as well. I mean, it's just being able to by either watching someone or listening to someone, being able to absorb that information and then have it flow back out through through your own body. I mean, it's very similar. Like, it's still
Mm.
pretty simple information when you think about it. When you break it down step by step, just having the ability, you know, to do it, to listen and to learn and to, you know, not be scared to go attempt it. Um, and then, I think some of the, as we get older, some of the, obviously the bigger building projects would be some of my brother's projects. After we built Dad's house, I was at East Central when Ben started building one of his cabins. But if I wasn't at East Central, if we weren't working out, I'd go, help Ben build a cabin. And so we got to be along for both of those builds. And when I came to SEMO, my summertime job was we'd work out in the mornings and I'd go frame houses. That's what I did.
Mm.
I was married at SEMO, so I was trying to make some income while I could. And I worked for a home builder named Sean Wren in Jackson, Missouri. And it'd be me and one of his laborers, and Sean might show up every other day. So it's three of us, and we probably framed 5 houses that summer. We just show up. There'd be like a foundation ready for us, and it'd be me and another guy, and we'd go frame, and it'd be hot. But learned a lot. Learned a lot, during that process as well. So I think it's a combination of things that kind of contributed to, some of my knowledge, building. And of course, I did construction management at SEMO, and really that came from I went into my advisor, and I was like, dude, I got 2 years. I was like, with the background I got from these other junior colleges, I'm like, what can I finish in 2 years? And just happened to land on construction management was one of the few that I could finish. And it was the spring of my senior year, which is probably one of my regrets as well, is I was still on campus. Because again, I didn't have a great career at SEMO football wise, but I was still on campus and I wanted to finish. And I was getting a few phone calls from the Raiders, but I was training myself, which looking back was silly. I should have had a quarterback coach. I should have had somebody developing me during that spring going in. I just honestly didn't think. I thought it was a long shot. I thought, with the career that I had, you know, I didn't expect to get a phone call on draft day after the draft was over. Obviously, I didn't get drafted, but I didn't expect to get invited to a rookie camp. I did not, and I wasn't ready. But that's a good learning experience for me. But again, I was able to do that construction management program, and my spring of my senior year, there was a group of guys from CTS Group, Control Technology Solutions, out of Virgie, who were some of the first performance contractors in the country. And I don't know how it happened, but they come in, they ask the professors there, they want to interview a group of guys for a big project coming up. And these are the guys that do big commercial construction work. And professors recommended me, and they offered me a job. I said, yeah, I'll take the job. I'm going out to, I'm flying out to Oakland next week. And if I don't make the team, I'll take the job. So I end up taking the job, and I've been able to learn a lot, honestly, some of it at their risk and at their cost. Me being as young as I was and as green as I was, just sitting back and managing their subcontractors, I've learned a lot. I've done over $100 million worth of commercial work. Anything from school additions, renovations to football stadiums, press boxes, athletic facilities, all kinds of cool stuff.
Mm. Well, let's jump to family. And Bruce, tell us about Kim and your other siblings or your other kids.
Nope, your other kids.
Oh, well,
and your wife Kim.
Again, yeah. Well, the Lord has blessed us, and we're grateful that all of our children are walking with the Lord. We've got our 14th grandchild on the way. So, I would have never dreamed that we would have such a good relationship with all of our kids and their spouses. But the Lord that's just been a blessing. My wife is so gifted in her relationships with her daughter-in-laws, and everybody loves her. Everybody loves Nanny.
Yeah.
So we're grateful, because I have a lot of friends and I know a lot of people who don't have that. A lot of Christian families that just don't. They've got some brokenness, and so I grieve for them, but we thank the Lord for what He's blessed us with.
Jesse, what about your family and your kids, and how have you enjoyed being a dad?
It's been, obviously it's been a huge, huge blessing. I have a great wife, extremely capable woman. She's a very positive, joyful person, and she's always been quick to back me on, any decision we're making. So that's been a blessing, and just blessed with two beautiful and healthy children, Timber and Mary Weston. We got a third one on the way this fall. Again, I think really cool experience just looking back, because my wife, and I'm sure y'all seen the reels, just documenting, since we first started, building the home we live in now. When I started, doing foundations, and of course I got my kids with me, and they're growing and developing through the whole process. And I'm doing it myself, so it's a slow process. 1.5 years it took me, but just to get to see their growth and development, from the first videos to now to when we get to move into the home. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So Bruce, share with us what you're doing today, you and Kim.
What are you doing today?
What are we doing today?
Yeah, I think you got a ministry you're working on, aren't you?
Yeah. So, after 38 years of working for the school, I stepped away 3 years ago, and Kim still works there, but we went on a marriage intensive to Canada 3 years ago for a week. And it was a real game changer for us. And in that process, we felt the Lord calling us to come alongside married Christian couples, a lot of them in ministry, pastors, missionaries, and to provide them this information and the tools. And so we started doing marriage intensives right after we finished up there. And we have been, we train with an organization called Shepherd's Heart out of Parker, Colorado. And our ministry is through our church, Presbyterian Church in French Camp. It's called Renew. And we have couples in our home every week at different levels, just walking them through stuff, starting with their old story and their baggage and stuff that they need to work through. And God shows up. We got a good team of people who pray for us in all that, and that's the big difference. We can sense God's presence during those times, and we've seen the power of God change couples and grow them closer toward each other. So we're grateful for that. It's been really fun. It's a big change from working with kids.
Hmm. That's great. Well, let's jump to legacy, Austin, and go ahead.
Okay. And this is for Bruce or Jesse, whoever wants to go first. How has your faith helped you navigate the highs and lows of your life and career?
I'll be honest with you, like Jesse, I hadn't had a whole lot of hard stuff in my life. God's been very good to me, but certainly his having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and spending time every day, all day with Him is what brings my life value and meaning. And so for me, everything else starts there. If I don't have that, I don't have much else.
Hmm.
I'm pretty much a bum if I don't have that.
Yeah. Well, I think for me is, just realizing there's a bigger picture. There's something bigger than myself. How does that influence those? How am I influencing those around me, and can they see that in the way that I'm living day to day? Do I really believe what I'm saying? So I think that's how it relates to me as well.
What would you guys say has been the biggest thing you've learned from watching each other live out your faith?
Like I say, God has blessed me in watching my kids own their faith, because it is a process. You don't know when you're raising them until they get out there and they go through some of those hard things on their own. You don't know where they're going to end up. But it's been amazing every day that I observe all four of my biological kids walk with the Lord. Doesn't mean life's perfect. Doesn't mean they don't have struggles. But I just see them grounded in a walk with Christ, and you know when it's there, and you know when it's not.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it goes back to that same attribute that you mentioned earlier, Coach. I think it's not just for athletics, but I think it's that that consistency, over a lifetime to to see Dad, love his wife, be faithful to his wife, and be faithful to the ministry and what he believed in. I think it just says a lot about him.
What are you most grateful for your dad, Jesse, and then Bruce? What are you most proud of Jesse for?
Again, I think it's that what I was just saying earlier, that consistency. I mean, he's always been there. and again, I haven't experienced much, hardly any hardship in my life, but he's always been there. He's always been a loving father. And he's always loved. I'd say I think that's the biggest thing. I think he's always loved our mom, and he's always encouraged us in our walk and our faith. So I think that'd be the biggest thing.
Hmm.
It's I was preaching a sermon at the church a while back, and I was telling them a story about Jesse, and I said, you know what's cool is for most of our relationship, when I talk to Jesse, it's been hunting, football, building. And it wasn't until maybe a year ago, that Jesse started talking about theology. He'd been he's been involved in the church. I think he's seen the importance of his personal involvement in the body of Christ here locally. He goes to a really good church, and that has connected him with some other guys, put him in Bible studies. To me, that is the next level, when God has brought him to that place where he sees the importance of the body of Christ and other believers, and having those relationships and having those conversations. So that has really been one of the top encouragements for me.
So this is to both of you as we get ready to close. When someone spends time with, and I'm going to call it Team Hosket, what do you want them to experience, and how do you want to be remembered?
You say that because growing up, there was a Team Hosket, and everybody knew it. Everybody around us talked about Hoskets, and I didn't want that to be an arrogant, prideful thing, but I knew that my boys and my girls were my greatest ministry to the kids that I was working with. If I couldn't do it with my own kids, I couldn't expect to do it with somebody else's. And so God always blessed that. But Team Hosket was very real. We've always known that God has called us to be a light to the world around us. And so we want them, when they're around Team Hosket, to see the gospel lived out. And we want them to be encouraged and come out more hopeful with their circumstances. We want them to learn how to make good use of their time and be a good steward of what God has given them, whether it be money or abilities. And so that's all part of being Team Hosket.
Thank you. Jesse?
No, I'd say the same thing. I think just encouraging those around us, being encouragement to the body of Christ, pointing people toward Christ, not so much toward ourselves. I think those are all great things.
Well, the last thing we like to do is we call it final words or words of life to each other. So Jesse, I want to give you an opportunity to say something to your dad and from your heart, and Bruce to Jesse, and then Austin will follow, and I'll close us.
Something encouragement to Dad. Oh man. Yeah, I just think seeing some of the ways you've handled some of the difficulties, like having to step away from the ministry and the way it was handled, like it really made an influence on me. Just the way you handled it, just positivity, like just truly being grounded in what you believe, even though a lot of your life was dedicated to that ministry, and just having to step back from it. I think it really stood out to me and encouraged me in my own faith. I mean, hey, our life is we're not valued by what we're doing or what our job is. We're valued by who we are in Christ. So.
Amen.
Amen.
Bruce?
Yeah, that's something that we say, but you don't know where your identity is until I know Ken and I've talked about this season of life that we're in when we're not football coaches, and that's what you were your whole life, or you're not in charge of something. You find out where your identity is. And I'm grateful that the Lord has showed up in all those times. And so, I'm very grateful for Jesse and the way he has not only led his own family, but has led even in our family at times when people have needed him. And I'm grateful for the man that he has become, way beyond, I'll be honest, way beyond when I was training my kids to play football, to be a good steward, to work hard, to love the Lord. All those things they have taken and gone way beyond what I have ever done. And so I'm grateful for his testimony in this place. This is where God's called him, and he's been very, very fruitful here in this place.
Thank you.
I'd like to start by saying thank y'all for the opportunity to spend this hour and a half with y'all. The second thing is, Jesse, it was an honor and a pleasure to watch you play. And, obviously you guys had great success when you were at East Central. And my dad, believes in you still to this day and all that, your capabilities. I just want, when I sit and listen to y'all's story and y'all's heart and how you share it, things that pop out to me is one, the word grounded, like just in the midst of, your guys' abilities and your talents. I mean, you've always stayed to that anchor, which is Christ. And, I also, Jesse, for you, you're so well-rounded. You're not just a football player. I mean, you're building houses, you're a family man, your faith is important to you. God is doing some really cool things. And I think that is such a testament to you, Bruce, of just how you've lived your life and you've modeled, this faith. Because once again, sometimes as Christians, we tend to either be on one side of the aisle or other. We're only Christian, we don't do football very well, or we only do football and we don't do Christian. And like my dad and I talk about a lot, is it's about, whatever we do, it stems out of our relationship with Christ, whether it's football, building a house, or leading a family. And I think, just sitting here and listening and watching and seeing y'all's relationships, the relationships are fruits of the way you've lived and how you've raised your children. And I think it's a beautiful testimony of the family you guys have. So thank y'all for your time, and I appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Austin, for the kind words, man.
Bruce, from a dad to a dad, I want to say you've done a good job. And I know you love those kids, you and Kim, and you have been I know today you have been an encourager to me through your story. And it's just to see the relationship that you two have, the transparency and vulnerability you have, is a blessing. So just again, as Austin said, we thank you for your time. Jesse, you'll always be very important to me. And we just want to thank you for allowing us today to share your story on Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time.